So we are talking about 7th century, 610. Everything started in the city of Mecca, in the Hijaz region of Arabic Peninsula. Even before oil, Arabic Peninsula was an important and a strategic place actually, because Arabic Peninsula is just right between Mediterranean basin and Indian Ocean. So we have a lucrative trade between Mediterranean basin and Indian Ocean, and all those trades actually passing through Arabic Peninsula. So because of all of that, Arabic Peninsula was in a strategic position. So we have a spice trade between those parts of earth and people passing through those lines. Even before Islam, Arabic Peninsula was important. How do we know that? Because in the 1st century, Emperor Augustus, the first emperor of Principatus era, sent his troops to invade Hijaz region, to invade Yemen. Romans tried to invade Yemen, to make Yemen and Hijaz a Roman province in the 1st century. They couldn't manage to do. They lost because it was so far away from the city of Rome and was a logistical nightmare for the Romans. So they couldn't handle the situation and they couldn't invade Hijaz, or they couldn't invade Yemen. But even though they made a campaign, which means this region was important. Do you know how they used to call that region? As the name of the region in Latin language was Felix Arabia, which means the rich Arabia, the lucky Arabia. Because for the Romans, today's Jordan, for instance, was called as Arabia Patrea because the city of Petra was there. The north of the Arabic Peninsula was called as Arabia Patrea by the Romans, and the southern part was called as Felix Arabia, which means richer Arabia, because it was on the trade route. Roman Empire and Persian Empire both were the superpower. They were competing one another. There are some small petty kingdoms which were supporting either side, Lahmids and Ghassanids, which were some small Arabic kingdoms. One were supporting the Roman Empire because they were Christian Arabs, and one were supporting the Persians because they were paganic Arabs. Both of those superpowers were trying to get a piece of that important trade route. You're supposed to follow the sea routes, which were much more convenient, much more faster, and much more cheaper. You would either follow the route of Persian Gulf or you would follow the Red Sea route. The Persian Gulf route was under the control of Persian Empire. Because of that, since the Romans were rivals to the Persians, they would prefer the Red Sea route. For the Romans, that Red Sea route, Indian Ocean, Red Sea, Egypt, and Mediterranean, that route was very important. They were trying to get control of this route, and at the choke point, at the entrance of the Red Sea from the Indian Ocean, we had another important kingdom, the kingdom of Aksum, Ethiopia, which was a Christian kingdom at that time, which makes them an ally with the Roman Empire. So Ethiopian Christians, Aksum kingdom, and the Roman Empire were both Christian kingdoms, and they were allied with one another. So their rivals were Persian Empire, and at that time also we have another kingdom in Yemen. That kingdom was a Judaistic kingdom. And the Ethiopians were claiming that the Jewish kingdom in Yemen were persecuting Christians. They invaded Yemen, claiming that they were actually liberating Christian population in the Yemen. So they invaded Yemen, the Ethiopian forces. And they even continued their route to the northern part from the Yemen to Hijaz region, into Mecca and Medina in that region, for instance. And if you check out Quran, you would find a surah in here, which means a chapter in Quran is about this battle, is about this war, which Ethiopians were trying to invade Hijaz region with their elephants. Because when they were trying to invade Yemen and Hijaz, their rival, the other superpower, Persian Empire, tried to stop them so they would not have the control of that trade route. The Persian forces reached to Yemen to fight against the Ethiopians, and they fend off the Ethiopians from Hijaz and Yemen regions. Now, the Yemen region is under control of the Persians. So the Persian Empire invades Yemen because the Ethiopians invaded Yemen in the first place. They were all competing one another. They were all fighting one another for the dominance in the Arabic Peninsula. So Arabic Peninsula was always important, and the city of Mecca was an important center for the Arabs because it was a religious center as well. There is an important temple in the city of Mecca, several different idols of different gods of different Arabic tribes. Even before Islam, Kaaba was an important temple for the Arabs. So every year, many Arab tribes were visiting the city of Mecca for a religious festival to visit their gods. Kaaba in the center of the city of Mecca was an important temple. So this makes the city of Mecca in an important position among the other Arabic tribes. This makes the city of Mecca also a rich city, because every year different people from different tribes visiting your city. They were not just visiting that city only for religious purposes. Since they were here, they were making also trade connections, agreements, and so, which makes the city of Mecca an important center. Since it was a polytheistic temple, and since it was a polytheistic festival we are talking about, there were different gods and different idols, statues of gods in the old temple, the Kaaba. I might say it creates a kind of conflict of interest between Muslims and the other Meccans, because Prophet Muhammad claimed there is only one God. If you accept that there is only one God, that means you're supposed to destroy all those idols in the city, and you're supposed to end that polytheistic festival, which is bad for the business. That means those other Arab tribes would not visit your city anymore. You would like to continue that religious festivals and ceremonies because it is also lucrative for your city, even if you believe or not that polytheistic religion before the Islam. So there is a conflict of interest in that sense. Many of the Meccans were opposing Muhammad on the idea of one God. Because of that, maybe we also might claim. Before the Muhammad, several generations before the Muhammad actually, Kusay bin Kilab was their great-great-great-grandfather. At his time, the Quraysh tribe held an important position in the city, leading position in the city, the Kusay bin Kilab. We are actually talking about a kind of a transition from a kinship society into a civilization. We don't have all those civilized institutions yet. We are talking about tribal asabiya. We don't have a civilization. Kusay bin Kilab become a kind of primus inter pares in the city, first among the equals, which makes him the leader, but he is not above the people because they are an uncivilized, a pre-civilized society. Everyone see each other as equals. We don't have a class distinction yet. So people would see Kusay bin Kilab as their equal. After him, after Kusay bin Kilab, his sons were competing one another to see who is going to be his successor as the leader of the city, between Abduddar and Abdul Manaf. And Abdul Manaf becomes Kusay bin Kilab's successor. After Abdul Manaf, we are going to see there is another rivalry between his sons, between Abdul Shams and Hashim. Since Abdul Shams was the older brother, he was really old than Hashim, actually his son Umayyad bin Abdul Shams was competing with his uncle Hashim for the leading position of the city. So the ones who are on the side of Hashim and the ones who are on the side of Umayyad bin Abdul Shams. With that, the tribe of Quraysh, the family of Quraysh, is divided into two sections, Hashemites and Umayyads. And the son of Hashim is Abdul Muttalib, and his sons are Abu Talib, Abu Lahab, Abdullah, and Hamza. Abu Talib is the father of Ali. Abdullah is the father of Muhammad. Muhammad's daughter Fatima is married with Ali, Abu Talib's son. And Ali and Fatima has their sons Hassan and Hussein. On the other side, Umayyad bin Abdul Shams, his son Abu Sufyan, and his son Muawiyah, and his son is Yazid. At the time when Muhammad born, he was not a very important figure in the Qurayshian tribe, because first he lost his father and mother. He was under the protection of his uncle. The rest of the Qurayshians, they saw Muhammad as a not very important figure in the Qurayshian tribe, not very important figure in the family. But we are going to see that Muhammad is going to make a revolution. He is going to destroy all the social structure and the political structure in the city. He is going to destroy the tribal asabiya, tribal tendencies, and he is going to try create a universal asabiya. Who becomes Muslim becomes in the same asabiya. So it's a very hard task to do. When Muhammad claimed that there is only one God, Abu Sufyan was leading figure in the city. Him and even some other people from Hashemites were standing against Muhammad. Even some of the Hashemites ending that religious festival of the Kaaba and destroying that temple and accepting only one God would end and diminish the importance of the city for the Meccans in their eyes. They claim that if we are not going to follow the way of our ancestors, if we are not going to follow the religion of ancestors anymore, if we are going to destroy all those idols in the temple, we won't have these trade connections. We won't be a kind of center in the Hijaz region anymore. Because of that, even some Hashemites and most of the Umayyads were standing against Muhammad in the first place. Because of all those anger and persecution, we are going to see that Muslims at that early stage left the city of Mecca and they migrated to city of Medina from Mecca, which is the starting point for the Islamic calendar. Because when Muslims migrated from the city of Mecca to Medina, they become a kind of political power. They turn into a political power. Muhammad became a leader in that city. And they are going to see that after several years, the Medina and Mecca become rival cities. Afterwards, they invaded the city of Mecca. And after Prophet Muhammad's death, we are going to see that Muslims are going to invent a new institution, which is called as Caliphate. The main source of Islamic law is actually Quran, and the other source is the Prophet Muhammad himself. The institution of Caliphate is invented as ijma, which means consensus populi. So there is a consensus among the people. The people decided that they would need a leader. So they elected a ruler, a leader. Just like Muhammad was leader before, Khalif actually means successor. That succession is not for the succession of the prophecy, but to succession of the leading figure. The caliphs are not the successors of prophet in that sense, but they are the successors of the leader of the Muslims. Abu Bakr becomes the first caliph, the first leader after the death of Muhammad. And even he said that they should follow his order only if his orders are just and applicable with the general principles of their laws with the Islam. So he claims that in that sense, actually, the rule of law after the death of Ali, the fourth Caliph, we are going to see that there will be a civil war among the Muslims. And that's why we have different sects today, like, for instance, the Sunnis and Shias, and so and so.